Well, today we're going to have a look at bittercress identification. There are now 5 different bittercresses in Britain, and here are the first 2 very easy ones. So, up at the top we've got Cardamine hirsuta. This is a very widespread common weed, particularly in the spring, dry areas. Tends to be less frequently later in the year, but it's characterised by having a strong basal rosette. So it's well defined, and on this specimen here it's even more clear, very clear basal rosette. The second character is it usually has few stem leaves, so in this case we don't even have a stem leaf, no stem leaf at all. But on this one we've got 1, 2, 3 stem leaves, so 1, 2, 3 stem leaves, and that's very typical of Cardamine hirsuta, 0 to 3 stem leaves. Another character you'll also see is that the stem here is glabrous. It really doesn't have any hairs on. Now, Linnaeus, when he named it, said it's hirsuta, which means hairy compared perhaps to some of the other glabrous bittercress or Cardamine species, rather than meaning that its most common close relative, flexuosa, the hairy bittercress, it's not to be confused with the hairy bittercress, just because its name is hirsuta. So this is Cardamine hirsuta, and it can sometimes have 2 stem leaves or no stem leaves. And then the other character, which you can't see on this video, is that it usually has 4 stamens. So if you take out each individual flower and look at them, most flowers will have 4, occasionally you'll have 5, and very occasionally you'll have 6 stamens. So that's Cardamine hirsuta, very common. And then for comparison, we've got the Cardamine flexuosa down here. So Cardamine flexuosa, that's probably easiest to show on this one, has a much more poorly defined basal rosette, and it tends to have 4 to 7 stem leaves. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stem leaves on that one, and we've got probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stem leaves on that one. But when they get very little, like on this little thing, you may only have 4, and that's not very many really. But they're very dwarf, sometimes they're difficult. And the other character that it usually has, but not always, is the stem is hairy. Now you can probably see that here quite clearly, the grey fuzz on either side. So that's very distinctive, it's usually hairy. And then you also see that the stem is zigzag, so it's flexuous, so it goes from side to side. And this is really strongly shown on this specimen, where it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's zigzagging up. So Cardamine flexuosa can be done just on jizz like that, with 4 to 7 stem leaves, sometimes perhaps 8 stem leaves, and a very flexuous stem that's hairy. And then the stamens, when you look at them, they've got 6 stamens on most plants, but occasionally you'll have one with 5, and very rarely I have seen some with only 4 stamens. Now, because 2 of the stamens are small and reduced compared to the other long ones, you have to look quite carefully. So some people only see the 4 long stamens and don't look for the 2 short ones. So be careful. So here you have the 2 side by side. Now, in theory, that should be all we need to do for most things, but now that we've got more species in Britain, you've got to be really careful. Just as a quick aside, here is the narrow-leaved bittercress, Cardamine impatiens. This is biennial in old woodlands and things, and it has very much more deeply lobed leaves. And then it has a stem with hundreds of stem leaves and flowers with virtually no petals at all. A very distinct thing. And historically, we used to think that Cardamine flexuosa was a hybrid between Cardamine impatiens and Cardamine hirsuta, but now that's been shown not to be the case. So that's the 3rd species. That's very distinctive. I don't think anyone will muddle those up. And then we had a problem that along came New Zealand bittercress. Now this looks like a very dwarf, deformed Cardamine hirsuta, and you see it's got distinct rosettes with few pairs of leaves on. So sometimes just 2, sometimes 3 side lobes along the side. And then these are the pathetic little inflorescences. You see that's actually a fruit on the end, the bright green bit. And these often come out straight from the base of the plant without any flowering stem at all. Sometimes they may have a few and they're branched, and usually there are no petals. So early in the year, you can often find it does have very conspicuous petals, but just because these have been in the greenhouse, they're not developing them. And later in the season, again, you don't see any petals. So you can sometimes think you've got two different things. So that's now become quite widespread as a weed, spread by garden pots and things like this, and is established quite widely now around the country in urban areas and things. And then, very recently, we have another Cardamine hirsuta relative, a thing called Cardamine occulta. And here we have Cardamine occulta found today in pots in a garden centre in Cardiff. Now, if it's in pots in a garden centre in Cardiff, it is likely to be everywhere in Britain. And it's been known in Britain in pots in garden centres since 2014. And Mick Crawley today has found 2 plants in London naturalised on paving slabs and things like that. So this thing is now around. So how the hell do you tell that different from the others? Well, first of all, it's not quite right for Cardamine hirsuta or flexuosa. So it's got a stem. The stem is glabrous or very, very sparsely hairy. And it's got a few pairs of stem leaves, 1, 2, 3. And then it usually has consistently 6 stamens. And then if you look at the shape of these end lobes, you see that they're very, very deeply lobed, 3 to 5 lobed. Whereas on Cardamine hirsuta, I put one beside it, you can see that they're scarcely lobed at all. So this thing is tall or upright, and again it's just spreading around the country now in plant pots and things. So go to your local garden centre, have a look, you'll get your eye in, and then you should be able to find it in the wild. So there we are, 5 different Cardamine species. So Cardamine hirsuta with 4 stamens, strong basal rosette, few stem leaves and glabrous stems. Cardamine flexuosa, 4 to 7 stem leaves, zigzag, hairy, 6 stamens. And then we've got Cardamine occulta, which has 3-4 pairs of leaves, 6 stamens, glabrous or sparsely hairy stem. And then we've got the New Zealand bittercress, Cardamine uniflora, which has virtually no stems, strong basal rosettes and tiny pathetic flowers. And you're lucky if you can see any stamens in those. So there you are, bittercresses.